I kind of think of it in a way as like building a house, for a lack of a better analogy. But you kind of have to have the foundation in place. And to me, the foundation is just your profile. It's like what people see when they come to interact with you and decide whether or not you're worthy of their time, which is essentially what they're deciding. So to me, it's like really getting the profile nice and clean. It's making it very clear who you are, who you help, what you help them do, and how you help them do it. If people can't figure that out, it becomes more difficult to commit to following someone. So cleaning the profile up, nice banner image, nice headshot, a nice tagline, a nice about section, featured section with your website, newsletter, things like that. I think those are all sort of standard things. I think the next thing is thinking about like, what's the one thing you want to be known for? You can't talk about sales one day and then talk about your favorite zoo animal the next day and then where I went with my kids and then here's my favorite rap album and like it, all over the place. What do you want to be known for? And what should your audience come to expect from you on a regular basis? And your profile should reflect that, and your content should reflect that. If you do that effectively and you talk about the same thing, and I always say, learn how to say one thing 1,000 ways. It's better than saying 1,000 things one way. And if you can do that, you become really well known for a specific thing. And if you can become well known for a specific thing and write effectively about it, you will build a small group of followers who are interested in that particular thing. If you can do that, then you can move your career forward in whatever thing that is. So I think those are basically, that's like the starting point. I think it gets a lot more robust. You can get super granular. There are tricks and tips and, quote unquote hacks, for lack of a better description, but that's the starting point for me.
How should I think about my headline? Because I think that's one of the most impactful out of the box things that I can edit when I land here. And you could easily show in your headline, like, founder of Justin Welsh, whatever you have as your experience here, founder of Justin Welsh, self-employed, or something along the lines of like creator. But you have almost like a mission here. So how do you think about the headline?
I don't think that there is an objectively right way to write it. It's funny, my newsletter this Saturday actually is covering this very topic. But again, there's not like a right way to do it. But I think generally it falls into a few different camps. One is just like, what do you do? Basically, like, what do you do for whom and how? I think that's a really interesting thing. Like CEO at company or account executive at here or software developer at here is not meaningful or beneficial to anybody in your audience who's considering following you. It tells them nothing of value. You can also find that in the experience section. So there's no need to repeat that. I think you have to give people a compelling reason to follow you. So again, who do I help? What do I help them do? And how do I help them do it? Or if I follow you, what will I get? So I write posts about X, right? Or follow me for more of Y. Like that's another way to sort of do it. I chose a third way, which is I wanted to give people an interesting mission that I was on and for them to see that mission and say, this is a mission that I want to follow. So I chose building a portfolio of one-person businesses to $5 million in revenue. To me, that's like, to me, it's interesting. And if people find that to be interesting, then I'm a person that you want to follow. And because I think we're in the midst of, again, using some cliche words like great resignation and all this stuff, I think learning how to go out and build your own business, your own one-person business, is interesting to a lot of people. And so my hope is when they see that tagline, they'll be compelled to follow.
For people who haven't been on LinkedIn in a while, and that's actually probably true for a lot of folks listening to this, you might not realize that when you post something, your headline is actually seen below your name. It's pretty Correct. Differentiated on LinkedIn versus other platforms as you get this headline, this calling card underneath your name when you show up in the feed. So it is important because this is really, say this pops up in somebody's feed and they're not connected to you and they see this like, oh, who's this guy? Like, I feel like that's the thought I have as I'm going through my feed and seeing new things. Like, who's this guy? And You're right. The title, it's kind of, there's like some social proof there if your title is pretty sexy and high level, but again, it's not really showing me how you're going to help me. It's just showing me how seriously to take you in a way.
Yeah. And you can use it to say, how am I going to help someone? I do think like I teach X to do Y through Z is getting a little bit overused. And so although I think that's a clear way to make a point, I just wanted to be different. So one thing that people don't realize, what you pointed out, is that it's underneath your name anytime you post. It's also underneath your name anytime that you comment. And so that also provides a lot of sort of awareness as I go around and make hopefully what are seen as intelligent comments on other big and popular creators on LinkedIn. I like to comment on their stuff. And when people see my tagline, my hope is again that they feel compelled to follow me. But because they feature that, it's kind of a creator's dream in a way. There's plenty of things that are a creator's nightmare about LinkedIn, but that is one that I love about the platform.
I agree. Okay. So you mentioned having a good profile photo, which seems obvious, but is also missed, I find, on all platforms, not thinking about your profile photo that much. Who you can help, how you can help them. One thing that I think you do really well is now that you've employed a newsletter, your LinkedIn audience, you are moving to other places within your ecosystem. Can you talk little bit about that?
Yeah, I kind of came up with this idea of something that I call the creator funnel that is really thinking through like how do people make decisions? How do people make decisions in today's like modern era? And I thought through how I make decisions for the most part. What have I bought? Who do I interact with? And what are the steps that I've gone through? So it kind of boils down to a few different things. There's awareness or discovery, like discovering that somebody exists and that they're interesting. That's sort of step number one. And most people discover or become aware of a creator through short form social media, whether that's Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube or whatever. And then I think once you sort of become aware of somebody, one sort of key turning point in if you're calling it a relationship, is starting to trust that person, but not trust in a way like I want this person to babysit my kids or look after my house. It's more of like trust in a way that this person knows what they're talking about. And so to me, a newsletter is an opportunity to show how my brain works and how I think about things at a much deeper level. And so the intention of the newsletter is twofold. It is to show how I think at a deeper level and build that trust with my audience. And it's also meant to deplatform users off of places like LinkedIn and Twitter and into an email address that I own. So that's obviously really important. So once you are showing people how you think at a deeper level, the next part of the creator funnel is deepening the relationship. And this is tied to a lot of what you hear about community-led growth. You see a lot of that on Twitter, on people talking about that on LinkedIn, and that's giving access to you. That's one-on-one access. It's coaching calls. It is doing events. It's going and doing things in person. And so I have a private community of about 700 members across 57 countries. And not only do we run events and chat with people on Slack every day, but my wife and I have also gone to New York, London, San Francisco, LA, Lisbon, Madrid, and thrown happy hours, get-togethers. And this is deepening that relationship. Number one, it's cool to meet really interesting people. But number two, once that relationship is really deep, they're just much more likely to continue to be a customer of your business. And so I think of that awareness and discovery at the top, trust building in the middle, and then relationship deepening in the end. And I think if you do those things really effectively, you're able to build a really great business. And that's sort of the thought process behind getting that newsletter started.
A frustration that I hear amongst a lot of creators is they understand that social media, these borrowed platforms, they're great discovery engines, but they want to get people into an ecosystem that they can control more, like email. Email's a great example. Podcasting is actually another good example.
For sure.
And it's hard to do because these platforms equally are incentivized to not let you do that or not want you to do that. And it seems like when you post a link somewhere, those platforms will often dampen the reach of those posts. One, I want to know if you have seen that and believe that to be true.
Yes. I mean, for sure. If you throw a link in a LinkedIn post or a Twitter, or a tweet, it dampens it for sure. There are hacks and tricks around that, right? There's the first comment on LinkedIn. There's driving people to your featured section. There's the new link in the top of the LinkedIn profile, which was rolled out last week. If you see right below sort of where I live, it says in Nashville there, it says grow and monetize your LinkedIn. That is a new feature where you can link to products or services. So yeah, I see that for sure. There's just, you got to be creative. You got to find ways around platforms trying to work against you. And that's, copy what other people are doing.
Yeah. And this is one of the things I've taken from you. One, your Saturday Solopreneur issue talking about this link in the LinkedIn bio, new feature, didn't realize it was out there. It's not like they released it with a ton of fanfare. I'm kind of surprised they put it in there at all, to be honest. So I was glad to get that in your newsletter. I see you're making good use of your featured section, as you said, because I would imagine the journey for a lot of people, if they aren't already following your work and it pops into their feed as a second or third degree connection, they're going to say, who's this guy? Like we said, they're going to look at your headline. Then they might visit your profile. And then, the game is, how do you actually get them to move to your website from your profile? And now this is one more way to do it with a link in your bio, but you mentioned the featured section here. That's fairly new. And even below in your experience, you can have links too. So I see you're doing all three of those. And I posted about this in our community. One of your posts that you put recently, you kind of teased an upcoming issue of the newsletter. And you put in the post, join 19,227 subscribers at justinwelsh.me. So it's not a link in there, but a brilliant way to get around that. Do you find that this is effective?
Very, very effective. I usually, every Friday, I tease out the next newsletter with sort of a TLDR of what's coming. And then I'll kind of do like subscribe. There's a few different ways you can subscribe. You can go to justinwelsh.me and I'll bracket the dot. You can find the link in the first comments, or you can visit my featured section. That gives people 3 different ways to subscribe, right? And then on Twitter, I'll do the same thing. Every Friday, I'll pre-sell my upcoming newsletter issue. And then once the newsletter is published, I'll post-sell it. So I'll go out and say 23,955 people just learned the top 4 tips for improving their social media profiles. And, I try and use a lot of numbers. I feel like that always generally gets people interested and excited. And that has been really a great and fast way to grow my newsletter. Now, I have a lot of followers, right? So like if you have no followers, it's not going to be as easy, but I've been able to grow it up to now almost 25,000 subscribers in 90 days.